Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Indian Nation Station pregame show right here on the Indian Nation Station. I'm AJ Ganger. With me, as always, the voice of Pickle football, Dwayne Bachman. We're getting ready for action to come our way here tonight. It's week 3 now. It's amazing. We're now 3 weeks into the football season, and it's been a very good one for our Pickwa Indians here so far.
Well, if you're a Pickwa Indian fan, you cannot be discouraged.
No.
I was thinking about it driving out. If there was a concern I'd have about Pickwa, I don't know if I'd had any major concerns. Turnovers and penalties would be the two things that would come to mind, and it hasn't been a big problem, but sometimes those things crop up unexpectedly, and they become a big problem at game time. But overall, I tend to think this has been awfully good starts, and tonight should be more of the same.
And, you mentioned the turnovers as well. It took the Indians 5.5 quarters to even turn the ball over, and they had 2 turnovers last week. But only those 2 turnovers really didn't hurt them that much at all.
And you're going to have turnovers. You're going to have turnovers just like you're going to have everything else. But turnovers and penalties, I think the penalties thing would be more of a concern because I think it's a little more personal fouls.
Yeah.
And Bob Luby's always questioned the wisdom of personal fouls.
Yeah,
and I do too.
I agree. Let's take a look now at the remaining schedule for our 2-0 Pickwa Indians. Tonight, we take on Greenville. That game will be live on the Indian Nation Station's YouTube page and posted for replay on Channel 5 on Saturday afternoon. Next week, we'll be live again with the Stebbins game. The following week, we'll be at Tip City, and then we close out the regular season at Sydney, which is another game right now that we are looking to go and cover. We will know more in the coming weeks once we talk to Sydney and see if we're allowed. I'm making a bold prediction here, Dwayne. I think the Indians are going to have a pretty good chance of being 5-0 going into that Sydney game at the end of the year. But right now I see 2 really big tests, Stebbins, Tip City.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. That's exactly my thought. Should we be the favorites against Stebbins? Yes, I think we should be. Will we be the favorites against Tip City? Maybe that might be more of a toss-up, but those are the 2 tests along the way. I don't think Sydney's quite as strong as maybe their first game or 2 would indicate, but you're right. I think it could happen, but the test will be Stebbins. And it will be Stebbins and Tip City, let's face it.
Yeah. Stebbins, they ended up beating Sydney last week as we take a look at the scores from around the MVL. Ended up beating Sydney 22-20. Very good game. I was reading the Twitter feed and saw a little bit of the live stream as well. Tip City shut out Greenville 28-0. Troy came back with a vengeance and blew Xenia out 34-7. And Fairborn ended up beating West Carrollton 45-32 in that shutout. So some very good games last week.
There certainly were. And I think everything being equal, the Fairborn team might be a sleeper in the playoffs if everybody makes it in the same bracket. But Fairborn looks to me like they're pretty good. Xenia lost all those seniors.
Yes,
and
did.
Boy, are they struggling. Troy's a pretty good football team. We know that. Tip City is good. 28-0 I thought was going to be a little more lopsided, but I think there are times when somebody has to decide how bad is it going to be, and 28-0 was enough.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, who knows how long Sydney or Tip City's starters even played in that game as well, too. Let's dive into the game me and you called last week with the final score, Pickwa 43, Vandalia 18. Brady Uhl was very precise throwing the ball, 13 of 15 for 235, 3 touchdowns. Karan Coleman, 3 rushes, 77 yards, the 1 big touchdown run. Josiah Medley with 4 rushes, 36 yards, and 2 TDs. Brady's brother Blaine, 5 catches for 75 yards, and then Garrett Shrub had the 2 catches for 46 in that touchdown there in the first quarter.
Well, those are awfully good offensive statistics, but let's not forget there's another side of the football. Our defense gave up 18 points. That's a little misleading, I think.
Yes.
That our defense has been very, very strong, and I tend to think they're going to get some time on the sidelines tonight, give some of the other kids a chance to play.
And, speaking of the defense, Lance Reeves-Hicks didn't play last week. Caleb Lyons, he stepped up on the defensive line. Landon Hare had 5 solo tackles and 3 sacks. And Jarrell Lewis with a huge hit towards the end zone. He was just talking about it to me today. I mean, those kids on that defensive side play so hard every single week, and they do it for Coach Neese every time they go out there.
They're inspired. There's no question about it. They think they can shut out everybody. Doesn't work that way, of course. But by the same token, you've got to be impressed. In fact, this 2-0, I can't believe there's anybody probably in the league playing any better than Piqua is right now.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Maybe Stebbins, but
yes.
I don't know. I don't know if there's anyone.
They're playing very, very well. And again, when you look at Brady Ewell, oh my goodness gracious. If you want to talk about the sophomore of the year in the conference, I know who's getting my vote.
Yeah.
It would be him. He has been outstanding. He has been poised. He has just pitched. He passed so well. His receivers have been pretty good too.
Yes.
He's had the receivers, and the receivers have had pretty sure hands. We can't forget that there's another side of the pass, and that is somebody's got to catch that thing.
He's playing like a senior or even a sophomore in college. I mean, the way that he's able to fit balls into windows, get them where their receivers can only get them, that's stuff you don't really pick up on until you're in college.
Oh, and again, his receivers haven't been completely. Garrett Shrub last week was an exception with that first touchdown he had, but you're right. He's throwing in traffic and doing an awfully good job. You got to be pleased with Brady Ewell, and if there's anybody that deserves a plaudit, it would be Brady Ewell.
And you got to also think that he's not only a threat throw the ball. We saw him; he was a threat to run the ball on those read option plays as he did against Troy.
Oh yeah, he's not one-dimensional by any stretch of the imagination. But again, when you look back at the Vandalia Butler game, Vandalia Butler was not, I didn't think was nearly as strong as Troy. And again, I tend to think that they might have some quarterback problems because we saw two different quarterbacks before that game was over. But I think the difference basically was when our kids looked across the line at Vandalia Butler, noticed they were quite a bit smaller than the week before when they played Troy. They were not nearly the size of Troy. But again, it was a competitive ball game for the most part. No question who won, 43-18. I wouldn't consider it a rout, but let's face it, 43 points, that's a lot of offense. 18 points, nothing wrong with that at all.
No, not at all. And, the Indians ended up giving up less than 100 yards rushing last week, a total of 66 yards on the ground for Vandalia. At halftime, they had 3.
Let's go back to that one because we talked about it at the broadcast, and I said that historically, not hysterically, historically, I would imagine you have to go back a long way to see the few running yards in a half. It was unbelievable.
9
but
total
I think
yards.
that tells us two things. First of all, our defense is sensational. Vandalia Butler's offense wasn't real strong.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, another thing that kind of strikes me as we're looking at this, Piqua only had 7 third downs on offense, but they completed only 1 of them. And that to me signifies, 2 things. When we get in third downs, we're not very good at converting on third downs, no matter if it's short or long. The second thing it tells me is our offense is getting on the field, not getting in third down situations that often and putting points on the board when we
I think you're right. Didn't have enough third downs to be real significant.
Yeah.
Because we were moving that ball and moving it very effectively. And again, running and passing. What a combination. And over the years, we've seen teams come in, and Xenia is a classic example last year. Their running game was absolutely super, but they couldn't pass, and it caught up with them somewhere along the line. But you've got to have 2 dimensions. We've got it.
Yeah, we definitely do. We also have a third dimension. That's our defense, forcing turnovers. Again, we forced 3 turnovers. All 3 of them were interceptions against Vandalia. And another thing, our defense was still performing while being on the field for a very long time. Our offense is that type of offense. You get on, you score, you get off. Mm-hmm. Our defense was on the field for 30 minutes. Our offense was only on the field for 17 minutes, 40 seconds. I mean, just the ability for our defense to still be playing at that high of a level, being on the field for that long, that means their conditioning is just completely better than everybody else's.
One aspect of the game, and you mentioned it, the fact that we had 2-point-effort touchdowns blocked.
Yeah.
I happened to talk to one of the players who was at a little barbecue where I was, and I asked him about it. He said, well, the coach thinks we're not snapping the ball fast enough to the holder. And he said, we'll work on that, but we got too good a kicker. We got to get him on the scoreboard every time we get in the end zone.
And you're talking about field goals. We had a 48-yard field goal attempt at the end of the half that the snap was fumbled by Brady Ewell, and the wherewithal, as you watch this play back, of Jarrell Lewis to leak out, see his quarterback's in trouble, and say, give me the ball. and Uhl threw it to him, and then Jarrell proceeded to run all the way down the sideline for 38 yards, dragging 3 guys with him into the end zone.
In fact, you can do everybody a favor that follows the Piqua Indians. You can isolate that play somewhere along the line where you might be able to play that when someone said, I'd like to see that again, because we didn't have replay at Vandalia Butler, but isolate that as much as you can. You know more about it technically than I do, because I want to see that a few more times. I've seen it 3 or 4 times. Gosh, who would have ever guessed it?
I mean, that's a play that you practice on the playground when you're 6, 7 years old.
And that is the one that broke the back of the Aviators at Vandalia Butler. Up until that time, I tend to think they felt that we can make a ball game of this. That one just took the stuffings out of them, and the second half was pretty much all Piqua.
Yeah, I mean, Piqua had a 17-0 lead going into the second quarter. As we were getting ready to go into the locker room, Butler got it down to 17-10, and then that touchdown pass, like you said, took all the momentum from Vandalia, gave it back to Piqua, and the rest was history.
Yes, you're right. That was impressive.
Yes.
And again, we got to give credit to the athletic director at Vandalia Butler. The stadium is beautiful. They had all the protocols for the spacing and everything. Very, very impressive. And we thanked him a couple times, but very impressive from that perspective as well.
Yeah, we want to thank them again, too, for allowing us to be there and call the game and get the game out to both Vandalia and to Piqua's communities.
Yes, it was a special night. And at halftime, I think we probably wondered how bad will it be. There was never a question in my mind at halftime we weren't going to win the game.
Right.
The question is not who, but how many.
I agree. All right, let's take a look at the games from around the MVL this week. Tip City and Fairborn, their game has been postponed to October 23rd due to coronavirus quarantine that they will be doing since they played West Carrollton, as all West Carrollton games are postponed for 2 weeks due to COVID concerns.
But now that game being played on the October 23rd can't have any impact on the pairings for the playoffs. Those pairings will be made prior to that, won't they?
We will have to know more when it comes out. I mean, if both teams get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, they're still able to play up until the end or going into, I believe, the state semifinals.
Well, I didn't give you my point was, can that game, which is a big game, had that game be played among the 6, it could influence the pairings of the playoffs. But the playoff pairings will be made before October 23rd, won't it?
It could, but they could be going off win percentage as opposed to going off a record. So if your record's 3-2 with just 5 games being played, it shouldn't impact that because your winning percentage is going to be like 6-something as opposed to being 3-3 and your win percentage being 500.
And again, I think both of these teams are probably good enough to make the playoffs and maybe even advance. Because these are 2 pretty good ball clubs.
Yes, they really, really are. We got Troy traveling to Butler to take on the Aviators there. Stebbins will go to Xenia. And Sydney was supposed to play West Carrollton, but they got picked up a game. Their athletic director did a great job in the last couple of days picking up an opponent as they're going to be playing New Richmond at home.
And I'm not so sure. Is New Richmond near Richmond, Indiana? Is it in Ohio?
New Richmond is down towards Cincinnati, actually closer to Kentucky.
Okay.
Yep.
I wasn't aware of that, but you're right. I'm glad they got a game.
Yes.
And again, Tip City Fairborn, I was kind of looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
That was going to tell us a little bit something about Tip City, Fairborn, and the playoffs.
Yeah, it really would have. I mean, because we play Tip City, but we don't play Fairborn this year, and that would have been a really good indicator of how good is this Tip City team, because Fairborn, for over the years, it's just like Kettering. Kettering was down, and now look at Kettering. They're becoming, dominant in the G-Walk. And now Fairborn, they've been stepped on a few years in a row being in the MVL and G-Walk, and now they're starting to get up there and get better.
I'm just glad they're able to reschedule the ball game.
Oh, yeah.
And I tend to think that the coaches that do the pairings and everything will take everything into consideration. But two pretty good ball clubs,
Yes.
and I just anxious to see who's going to win.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, we'll find out on October 23rd when they do square off, because we'll know a lot more about those teams when that game comes around then.
Yeah, I think the playoff thing is going to be interesting. Don't know how it's going to work, and I'm not so sure everybody knows how it's going to work. But this is what it's all about.
Yes.
This is all about. And based on what Pick was done so far, I tend to think the Indians can make some inroads when we get to the postseason.
Yeah, speaking of the postseason, we're going to talk about our game here tonight. For the first time since 2015, 5 years ago, the Indians started the season 2-0. Since then, they have not had a 2-0 start. But to go back even further and find a season where they started 3-0, you have to go back to 1999, when the Indians actually went 10-0 in the regular season. They would end up falling in the first round of the playoffs. But you would think, well, didn't they go undefeated when they won the state championship? No, they actually lost their first game to Grove City before winning the next 8 straight and then going on to win the state championship.
Somebody asked me a question. Maybe you have the answer. Somebody told me that in spite of the fact that Pickwa's won the state championship and been in the state Final Four, they've never had a home playoff game because they never were seeded enough to have a home playoff game. You think that's true?
I would have to imagine it probably is. I
believe it is.
Their record, when Pickwa won the championship, they weren't undefeated, so they were probably down a little further in the points, and you had probably 3-4 teams that were 10-0 that got the advantage. It's probably true, but I think this could be the year.
Maybe we have yet to play a playoff game at Pickwa that involves Pickwa.
And I guarantee you that if Pickwa does go undefeated this year, there is a really good chance that we could be seeing our first home playoff game.
Oh, I would certainly hope so.
Yeah.
Again, how that's all going to. I'm concerned about the playoffs from another perspective, since maybe we got time here. Somebody was telling me that some of the city schools in Ohio have done away with their fall sports, including football. What is that going to do to the postseason? If those schools, and a lot of them are the bigger schools, are we going to have an imbalance of the big schools to the point where we might not have enough big schools to have a postseason tournament? If we only got, say, 10 big city, I think it's Division 7 or Division 1, whatever it is.
It's Division 1.
If we only got, how can we possibly have 4 or 5 weeks of a playoff if we only got 10 or 12 teams to start with?
That's where scheduling will have to come in then. So the OHSAA may give those teams the first 2 weeks off. I mean, already the top 4 seeds in your region is going to get the first week off.
That's right.
And then you're going to move to the next round. If you only have 12 teams in one division or one region, you're going to have to schedule those games accordingly to make sure that they get them in.
Somebody suggested that they might redo the divisions. I don't think that is
I don't think
fair.
they're gonna do
I
that.
don't think it's practical, and I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't think so either. I think the only thing that they're going to be doing is going by your division and your region and taking those teams in your region and division and putting those pairings together.
And I would imagine if you were one of the decision makers, you could probably put something together with a dozen teams over 3 or 4 weeks. And again, the buys are the way of doing it.
Yeah, and they do that. I think they do that at the professional level as well. I mean, you think about college game or colleges. Colleges have 2 bye weeks sometimes, and then you play all 10 games or all 12 games, and you have your conference championship the week after your season. Then after that, if you make the college football playoff or even a bowl game, you still got 3-4 weeks before you even play again.
Another thing that came up this past week, and I'd like to have your response to it. Trotwood Madison decided early that they weren't going to play football.
Yes.
They waited 2 weeks and now changed their mind. I thought that was a rather unique approach.
Probably because they probably showed or they probably saw exactly how everything was going and the protocols and things like that, and they realized, well, this is actually a lot easier than what we thought. People, the reason why this season has been such a success around the entire state are the fans. The fans are following the protocols, the students are following the protocols, the athletic directors are following the protocols, and the states are at the games. They're watching everything. They're reporting everything back to our governor and our lieutenant governor here in the state of Ohio. And their reports are awesome. I mean, we are doing what we're supposed to be doing so we can have high school football here in Ohio.
And again, I would imagine in Trotwood Madison's case The people who decide on pairings and buys and things, they could possibly come in at 4-0.
Yeah, they really could. And I mean, again, if they go off win percentage, there goes your seeding.
And the season says anybody can go in. You didn't say you have to play 6 games to qualify for. You could be 0-1, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose you could end up playing one game.
All the playoffs are going to be interesting. Really are going to be interesting.
They will be very interesting. And, speaking of playoffs, we're just a few weeks away from finding out what they're really going to be
It's
like.
not very far away.
Nope, it's not. So the last time, think of it this way. The last time that Greenville beat Piqua was back in 2014. Since then, the Indians have won 5 straight games, including last year's game that was played here at Alexander Stadium. The Indians would end up winning 21-7. Karan Coleman had all 3 touchdowns on the ground for Piqua, and Piqua's defense forced 5 Green Wave turnovers. Greenville's coming into the night with an 0-2 record after losing to Sydney 56-0 and Tip City 28-0. They haven't scored a point yet this season, and I think tonight's going to be the same story. The Indians' defense, they're going to be very pumped up. They're not going to want to give Greenville their first points. Even if it's a safety, they're not going to want to give it up. And the Indians' defense has also forced a total of 7 turnovers in 2 games.
Well, another thing that I noticed as I was putting my charts together is that Greenville is going to have 8 or 9 kids going both ways.
Yeah, I mean,
and very few seniors, not many, almost all juniors, the way it seemed to me. But they've got a lot of kids going both ways. And in today's game, that is asking a lot of 15, 16, and 17-year-olds.
It is, and you want to compare teams that have a lot more players playing both ways as opposed to playing just a one way. Piqua maybe has 3-4 guys that actually play both ways, but there's so much depth on this Piqua team that they're able to switch in and out anytime that they want.
And I think that's the difference. We've got depth for those who are going both ways. And from what I could gather looking at the charts, Greenville, they're going to have to go with those 8 or 9 kids both ways. And sooner or later, that's going to tell from the strength department.
What do you think is going to be a key tonight for our Piqua Indians? I mean, obviously, we are clicking on all cylinders right now going into this game. Do we do much of the same as what we have been doing, or do we change anything up?
Well, the only thing that occurs to me, and I've been around a block a few times, and I've known Bill Neese a long time. Bill Neese is not the kind of coach who's going to try to score 100 points.
No.
Bill Neese is, he remembers the times when maybe he was on the short end. So it's not going to be, I would be surprised if it was 56-0 tonight. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be closer to what we got last week when somebody beat Greenville 28-0. Bill Neese is not the kind who's going to try to run it up just to be thinking that it's going to do us all a lot of good, because I don't think it will. And I think we're going to see a lot of kids playing. And you know who I'm interested in seeing who playing? I'm interested to see who's our second string quarterback.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see, because we know Blaine's a senior and he's receiver now, focusing on that, getting offers from schools. Brady, just a sophomore. Who's behind Brady? We need to know who's behind Brady.
And again, we've just got a lot of good football players, and I think we have to accept that.
Yeah.
And I think I would like to predict the 6-0. It's maybe going out on a limb, not the limb you're on, but nonetheless, 6-0 wouldn't surprise me in the least. It
wouldn't surprise me at all, because how motivated these kids are, and I think these kids came in this season seeing an opportunity. They know it's a shortened season. They know what they have. They know the teams that they're playing very well. They are very motivated. I mean, they're talking state championship.
Yes, that I understand. Well, and there's nothing wrong with being that optimistic, but I really think the difference has been offense.
Yes.
The offense this year is clicking.
Yes,
and they are clicking.
Yes.
And we got the running game, we got the passing game, we've got receivers, and of course, after offense and defense, we got the best kicker in the land.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. Well, we want to thank everybody who has actually watched us on the live streams the last 2 weeks for Piqua Indians football. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube page. Hit that subscribe button. We're around 820 people who are subscribed to us. Let's get to that 1,000. Thank you again for watching us here on the Indian Nation Station pregame show. It's your home for Piqua Athletics. We also want to thank Buffalo Wings and Rings, who's been streaming the game the first 2 weeks. I know they're probably going to be streaming it again. tonight over at Buffalo Wings and Rings. Go there, wear your Pickwa gear, get a free order of chips and salsa when you go in there as well, when you wear your Pickwa gear. We want to say good luck to both teams going on the field. Congratulations to all the seniors for all of our fall sports. They're celebrating, I know, football senior night tonight. We're going to do some other senior night activities in the next couple weeks here at home. Dwayne, you got anything to add?
Only thing I can say is that the Indians have played very, very well. I expect nothing less than that the rest of the way.
Me neither. All right, guys. You guys all have a great night. We will see you in just a little bit. Stay tuned for the game coming up right now on the Indian Nation Station YouTube page live for everyone to see. For Dwayne Bachman, I'm AJ Ganger saying good night, ladies and gentlemen, and go Pickwa.